Geographical. How you doing?
We're doing a long meeting this morning.
Yeah, I feel like I live here.
I figured it was going to pass. You did a good job.
It came out. I mean, it really came from almost from gel thing pretty quick. And I think because people are adults and they worked on the issues, makes a difference.
Did you want me to share?
Indiana. The AIC, yes, because I don't know what it's about. Yeah.
Okay.
You got that from Israel and
To see what, because I'm trying to remember when we get our next.
Hey, Todd.
One of those is current, one is the FDX.
Are we streaming? Can you ask Robin if we're streaming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we can take a vote. It's cold. No, it's cold. It's cold.
It's the usual.
Let's not bring up the last meeting. Remember, it was really cold and we got really, really hot.
I think, yeah, that was part of what was. Go ahead and call the meeting to order and start with prayer. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to come together and do the work that you've appointed us to do. May we do it with the right mind, right heart, and your guidance. Thank you for all that we have in this county, in our homes. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Robin, if you're ready, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Norrie,
Present.
Councilman Gale,
Here.
Councilwoman Keller,
Here.
Councilwoman Likens,
Here.
Councilman Vaughn,
Present.
Councilman Emery,
Here.
President Steele.
Here. Next, the approval of the minutes.
I make a motion that we reject the minutes as presented. I have quite an issue with these minutes and with some other public records from the previous meeting. I feel like these minutes are very vague, and that leads them to be open to interpretation. And so starting on page 9 of the minutes, it states that President Steele presented the 2024 Madison County budget to the council, and no budget was presented until after the recess. The lengthy discussion that transpired revolved around the open door law and not actually the budget. President Steele and members of the council had made changes to the proposed budget behind closed doors and were trying to pass off their changed budget as the same budget that had been presented to the public during the public hearing. Then it says that President calls a 10-minute recess, and that is true, but it omits the fact that the recess was much longer than 10 minutes, and that just over 10 minutes into the recess, Rick Gardner can be seen pausing the recording, and that adds to the narrative that a 10-minute recess occurred, but it hides his conversation with Councilman Nork from the public record. The meeting resumed with a presentation of Rob Steele's proposed budget, and significant changes were made to the same. However, the way that the minutes currently read, it's not clear what budget we adopted at the last meeting. And that is very, very important because Auditor Rick Gardner then submitted Rob Steele's proposed budget, and not the budget we adopted 5-2, but what Rob Steele had proposed was submitted to the state for certification. And the way that these minutes are worded, it fits Rick Gardner's narrative that we adopted Rob Steele's proposal. And so I believe that these minutes need an overhaul to include the changes that were made to the proposed budget, and I need an explanation for how the incorrect budget was submitted to the state for certification.
I think we can have Rick address that, but there had to be a budget in Gateway, as I understand, Rick, on the night of our adoption. And do you want to explain, or from what I know, I got numerous questions from other council members, and it had to be corrected and uploaded because we didn't adopt what was presented that night, and it was edited or revised to reflect the council's wishes. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Just a point of order,
Just
a motion
one.
to reject is not in order, right? You have a proposal, if it fails approval, then it's ultimately rejected, but you don't vote on a motion to
Okay.
reject.
Okay.
I make
all
a
right.
motion that we amend the minutes.
I second that.
Okay, do you have
an amended?
Yeah, you have an amendment? What's your proposal exactly?
There's so much that's been left out of the minutes. You have over 4.5 hours of a meeting that are in 2 sentences. It leaves out the fact that there was public comment given both by an employee of MCCC and by an employee of the jail, for instance. But no, the minutes are just completely need overhauled.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify the motion to amend, what exactly it should say.
It needs to reflect what actually happened. It needs to clarify what budget we adopted, because the budget that we adopted is not the budget that Rick sent to the state for certification.
I think part of the confusion is just a lack of understanding of the process. The budget gets submitted prior to when that meeting even happened, because that's the budget that was presented at the September meeting. And so I think we have to be careful to first understand the process before we start hinting at accusations that something was inappropriate. So, I mean, I would suggest if our auditor is willing to explain the process so that the full council understands the timelines of how that works, that might be beneficial.
Sure. Rick, would you like to address that, please?
Yes, please, Rick.
Okay, which question first?
When did you submit the budget to the state?
We submitted the, well, I'll tell you what, I got it printed out here, so hang on a second. So your 2024, hang on a second, I'm looking for my highlight. Okay, so your forms, hang on. I was looking for the advertisement dates, but I'm having trouble finding them. So you had forms, we submit multiple forms to the state's forms 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4B. Form 4 is your adopted budget, which is the one you adopted. You're proposing that you adopted more than this that night. You didn't. You adopted this. This is what you voted on and adopted, which was your total amounts for your budget. What you're asking is, leading up to the night of the budget, when were forms 1 through 3 and 4 submitted, including 4B, and those were all submitted the day after you adopted. So how that works is all your financial forms 1 and 2, Your notice to the taxpayer is really when you set your budget hearing dates and so forth. So Forms 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the ones that we submit, and Form 4B after the day after the budget hearing. So they were submitted on the 11th after you had your 7-hour meeting and made hundreds of changes to your budget. Those were submitted. Under the circumstances, the way Gateway is set up is you're leading up to the budget. Starting with Form 1, it's a whole budget process. It's not a one-night deal. It's not a one-day deal. It's a process that takes place. Forms 1, 2, 3, and 4 fall in line. You adopt your budget on the adoption date, and all those numbers are already set by that time under normal circumstances. You chose not to do that night and made hundreds of changes to your budget. So we submitted all of our forms to the state, and then because the Form 1, you changed basically everything in Form 1. If you remember on the night of the adoption, you said, we told you that you had to be exactly the dollar amount, correct? You remember that? You have to be the exact dollar amount because that's what your budget ordinance says. What you do is, leading up to that, all those entries have to be made ahead of time, including the adopted column. We come to you the night of the adoption and say, here's what you're adopting. You chose to change that. So all that work, weeks and weeks worth of work leading up to that, had to be done again after you adopted that night. So you made all those changes. So what we basically do is send an email to the state or to a DLGF, say, hey, can you open up our Form 1? We need to make these hundreds of changes, and that's how it took place.
All right, so I'm really glad that Ben Gale brought this up. So after I received your email back, I did a significant amount of research on the Department of Local Government Finance website. I familiarized myself with the budget process from the auditor's perspective. I reviewed all the budgeting forms myself. I read the training manual for entering the forms into Indiana Gateway, and I watched a training video. I then called and spoke to the DLGF, and I spoke with Fred Van Dorp, who is the director of the DLGF's budget division. And I learned a lot. I asked him if this could have been like a simple mistake, and he told me no, and he was very concerned with what had happened. And so Form 1 can be pre-filled in order to produce the budget ordinance. So that part's not inappropriate, but it cannot be submitted prior to the budget adoption. And so following the budget adoption, the auditor has 5 business days to submit the correct adopted budget to Indiana Gateway for state certification. And so the day after we adopted the budget, you submitted Form 1 with Rob Steele's proposal to Indiana Gateway for state certification.
Yes, I already told you that.
So you did it on purpose.
Did what on purpose?
So you submitted the wrong budget to the state for certification.
I submitted all the forms on the 11th day of October, knowing that I had to go in and open those forms back up and make corrections to them based on 700 changes you made that night.
But you only have 5 days from the meeting to do that, according to DLGF.
Under normal circumstances, yes, we have to do them within 5 days.
Right. So
I actually thought it was 3 days, but 5 days, cool.
So when I got on Indiana Gateway on October 31st, so that's 3 weeks after our meeting, and I see Rob Steele's proposal as the budget that you had submitted to the state. That's 21 days after our meeting, so that would be what? 16 days after your deadline for submitting the adopted budget to the state. So after Form 1 has been submitted, you cannot, you can't change it. You can't edit it. It's in view-only format. So you have to contact the DLGF for them to open that up.
Yes.
And so, so when I contacted you on the 31st, you then contacted him the next morning. He opened it up and you changed it.
We have till they close out on November 8th. We had till November 8th to actually do that. Fred knew we were going to need to do that. We needed to do that because I'm trying to tell you again, you took weeks and weeks worth of work and you changed it. What you're proposing is in 5 days, we do work that took us weeks and weeks. Now you throw in the middle of that an audit that we're in the middle of, a federal audit that we're in the middle of, an audit that's getting ready to start because those two are finishing up, and an auditor's conference. You've asked us to do work for you in advance of the meeting, in advance of the adoption. Now you're asking us to do that same work again. So time is not that plentiful for us. So yes, I opened it back up and planned on opening it back up, got those changes made and submitted. That does not affect your budget process. That's the notice to the taxpayers that your budget is not even approved yet. You think it's approved, I'm sure, but your budget is not approved by the state yet.
Correct, but you submitted the wrong budget for
I did
certification.
not submit the wrong budget. I submitted all the forms because the forms had to be submitted within 5 days, according to you. So 5 days, I thought it was actually 3, but I got 2 extra days now in the future, but 5 days. But you're talking about more than 5 days' work.
Well, if that's true, then on the November 1st, when you realized from Mr. Steele, because I called him, I think it was the 31st that I had some communication with President Steele, that you then called down to the DLGF on the November 1st to get it unlocked, and you had all those changes done that same day.
That's because leading up to that, after that council meeting on November 10th, and also what you're talking about on November 1st, we're doing tons of work after the council meeting's over. We're taking your spreadsheet that you passed that night in that council meeting. We're going through every single line in that. We're matching that to our financial software, which we have to put that into before we can even upload it into Gateway. There's tons of work leading up to getting that on Gateway. And then we match all 3 of them and make sure they're matching. So I think, again, you're trying to manage what we do and the time we spend doing it, but we have far more to do than you think we do.
And I don't deny that, Rick, but when the DLGF, after talking with them and them telling us that no budget should have been submitted until after the corrections were made, that we changed that evening, and you didn't even take the 5 days to submit it, you submitted it the same day we passed it. So no changes
I submitted it
were
the
made.
next, well, yeah,
It
the
was
same
the
day.
same day.
It's the same day because you went into the
Yes.
next day with a 7-hour meeting. So
Yes. Yeah.
it's semantics at this point.
Yeah, I'm just saying that you had 5
What's
days
your
to make
question, though? What is your
I-
question today?
I think that the thing that people have to understand, the point that our auditor's trying to make, is in a normal budget cycle, a normal budget approval process, there may have been a few changes in the meeting that we would have
Exactly.
passed, and a few changes could have been done quickly by the auditor's office. We made significant changes. That's going to take a lot more time. The DLGF has a process that you went through, and the DLGF is not upset with anything that you've done.
You simply send an email to the DLGF and say, hey, can you open up Gateway? I have adjustments to make. The council made however many 100 changes, and I need to make those changes.
Right.
It's as simple as that, and then you
Right.
resubmit it. It's not uncommon. Well, it's uncommon for here because I don't think we've had to do that before. Because it has been 2 or 3 changes or something as simple as that. So,
I'm concerned that the wrong budget was submitted to the state, and that if I hadn't said something, that's the budget that the state would have certified.
I'm sure that's your narrative tonight. You always come in with the narrative, but I don't know what your question is.
I want to know how this happened.
The auditor's office would not have submitted, and the state would not have certified a budget that the county council did not vote to approve.
But he did submit it.
No, he submitted the forms.
Submitted
That the work
original
to
budget.
prepare those forms had been done prior to that meeting, because
Right.
that's what it takes, because it takes dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of hours to do that.
Yes.
So again, we can keep trying to be adversarial, and we can argue over these petty things, or we can understand that the process that the state allows for massive changes like this. Are we going to allow the disrespectful
Can the
behavior?
public please restrain themselves?
You guys gonna have public comment on this?
No.
If I could finish, the state is aware of the budget, and they have the budget that the council passed.
Yes.
That is what is going to be certified. And you did what you felt you could do to make that happen within the allowable amount of work hours that we budget for your people.
Yes.
Remember, he could have had people work a lot of overtime to make all of those changes happen faster and completely blown his budget. So which would you rather him do? Take a little bit of extra time or spend money that he didn't have to spend on?
Here's the
I'm
bottom
okay
line
with the
too.
extra
on the-
time. I'm not okay with you lying to the state.
I think.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure
I'm
that.
just gonna say
Point of
this,
order.
that I communicated with President Steele that the wrong budget had been submitted. He communicated with Mr. Gardner, you texted
And
me
I
back.
said that
And
I had talked with
originally,
him,
you
and
told
he
me-
was still working on
Original-
making those corrections. They had just gotten it in, I told you, they had just gotten it into the, is it Lear or Low software?
Lao software.
Lao software has to go in there first, and then it gets up spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet into Gateway. There's a whole process, and they were still auditing the data to make sure it was correct in all three locations before it was submitted.
Not to mention-
Originally, Rob, you told me that Rick was out of his way out of the office, and maybe Todd had uploaded the wrong budget to the program, and that you were going to look in, and that he was going to look into it. And then your final text to me was that they hadn't gotten all the data entered into the system yet, and that they were correcting it. So, I mean, those are two different scenarios.
We weren't correcting it. We were re-entering all the changes you've made. I know what your narrative is here tonight. We uploaded the forms as they were based on what was input into those forms prior to your budget adoption. We had to go back and do all that work again.
I understand that.
Okay, then.
Mr. Gardner.
What's your question?
I understand that you had to input the information in order to get an ordinance. I understand that. And that information would have been Rob's budget, because that was the $43.5 million budget that we were going to be passing.
Right.
But according to the DLGF, after that adoption hearing, after we adopted a hearing, nothing should have been submitted to the state until those changes were changed in Gateway. That's what we are being told from the DLGF. And that obviously was not done when it was submitted, because it wasn't on Gateway that way. And we know from the DLGF that you submitted it the same day as that we passed it, at about 1:35 in the afternoon. None of those changes were made. And honestly, I don't think if we hadn't said something on the 31st, I don't know that you guys would have done any changes based upon my
I'm sure that's your
correspondence.
narrative.
That's an assumption.
That's an assumption, and I'm really kind of sick of the assumptions. I sat in your spot for 6 years, and I've been now where I'm at 7 years. We haven't had this problem till you showed up.
Well, you know what, if this
We had
council had
a
worked
7
together
year,
as a
we had a
unit to have
7-hour,
meeting-
we had a 7-hour meeting that went into the next day. All the work leading up to that had to be totally redone again. We have to go into Lao Financial and hand enter every one of those changes, okay? Normally, we would take Lao Financial, download it into a flat file, and upload it into Gateway. Well, we're not able to do that when we have to go back and make those changes, those hundreds of changes. You can't do it just in a file upload. You had to go line by line. So after you went into your spreadsheet, we checked to make sure all those were right, went to Lao Financial and entered them all, then went to Gateway and entered them all, and then compared to 3 again. We don't do things as simply as you think it is. We have to check and double check things.
Well,
The
with all
other
due
thing is that
respect-
you're I mean, you talked to DLGF, they said, yeah, it should be done this way. Rick hasn't, I mean, there are always alternatives and
Yes.
corrections.
Yes.
It took 2 roads to get to the same place. It's correct now, is it not?
I don't know, because I've asked at least twice for a copy of the workbook that we did that evening, and I've been told I couldn't have it.
You got the same thing everybody else did. What,
I thought Rick said.
I did.
Yeah.
I sent,
He
this
sent
is,
the
this is
budget out.
another
He sent the
accusation.
budget out. He did not send the
Exactly.
workbook. I wanted to see the workbook, just like you sent us the workbook the Friday before of Rob's budget. I wanted to see the workbook
Did you not have a workbook that you were working out of during the council meeting, during that
Yes, and
7-hour meeting?
shame on me for not having
Okay.
recorded all the
Okay, so
changes.
you're saying you didn't have your work, so you want me to go do your work again? I sent you the
Rick,
budget.
I mean,
No, I
if you
wanted
have,
an
if you
email.
have the book, Todd, if you have the workbook that we worked on, if we can, I thought that was already sent out. I didn't look at all the files because I offloaded.
Yes, the workbook itself? No,
Yeah.
because that's not what you passed. You asked for the budget, and I sent you the budget.
Todd made all the changes in the workbook that night online.
Right.
And I would like a
What
copy
we
of
amended
that
in the
workbook.
meeting.
I would
You
like a
gotta say
copy of
what
the
you mean.
workbook that we amended.
I don't have a problem with that.
I thought it
And
had
I've
been
asked
sent
for
back
that, and I
out.
was told I couldn't have it until after the council meeting, that we had changes that we had to make. And I said,
No,
understood, and I said, I've got your email here, and I said, can I please
Yeah, I've
have a
got yours
copy of it
too.
anyways?
Right. So
And then you
for-
just didn't respond to that.
That's right, because I told you what I was going to do, right? You asked for something, I said, as soon as we check these and compile them, then I'm going to send them out, which I did to all 7 council members and the 3 commissioners.
So Councilwoman Norick and Councilman Bond had asked for the budget, and you did not send it to them, and that's when I get a phone call, hey, do you have a copy of what we passed? And I said, no, but I can get on Indiana Gateway and get it for you.
Right.
And when I did, on October 31st, I find Rob Steele's proposal as what had been submitted.
I'm sure you did, because we did not have our work done yet, because you changed the entire budget in a 7-hour meeting on adoption night. That doesn't happen anywhere in the state. That's a failure on the council's part, for you to take 7 hours to pass a budget when you're supposed to get that ready, and on the night of the adoption is just like, you've already figured it all out, here's the budget ordinance.
Well, that's what happens when only 3 council members go to meet with the auditor to create a budget, instead of sitting down in a public meeting and us hashing through the budget as a group. That could have been done ahead of time.
This auditor's
And that's
office has
something that we
never,
asked.
created the budget. We enter what we're asked to enter only.
3 council members sat down with you and created a budget, went through a budget process.
Did not create a budget. I did not create a budget. I made entries
Point
that
of
council
order.
members asked me.
You would tell, hold on.
I'm not
Mr.
talking to
Long.
you right now.
Guilty.
So what's your question, I guess?
It's not so much a question, Rick, as you're right, it's ridiculous that we had a council meeting till 1:30 in the morning. I agree. But when a council doesn't work together as a body and sit down and work and.
You got 6
Yep,
people you
and
need
I'm
to talk
saying
to,
this
not
my
to
council
me.
right
We'll talk
now.
to them about it
I am
then.
saying it to the council right now. We asked at the budget meetings, at the budget hearings, when we met department heads, what's next? We wanted to sit down and have a public meeting to go over this budget and to create a budget together. And our response was, the response back with us is that is a waste of time. So because there was no feedback on anything that I had been proposing, no feedback whatsoever, and then the night of the budget hearing, they submit a budget that 3 council members said, this is our budget, this is what we're doing. And I'm like, excuse me, we're not going to have any discussion about that? So yeah, we failed as a council to do a proper budget.
President
Agreed.
Steele, I would like to suggest that obviously the council should have discussion about the 24 calendar year, 25 budget year process, but that's probably something more appropriate to have during January, February, March of next year, so that we can maybe all
Yeah,
get
we did
our
talk
heads
about
together
lessons
and
learned.
do that. Because we definitely do need to have something that is maybe a written process that there's input. For tonight, though, I feel like we can get really off track and go down a lot of different paths with this topic. Or we could actually, have a time on the agenda to discuss those issues. So I would go back to the question of, is there a motion and a second, and what was that, and could we maybe stick to the agenda and
The motion
And I
to
haven't
amend
gotten to
this work.
speak yet,
The
Councilman
motion-
Gill. I've got some, may I speak, please? I've been patient. We're not closed discussion. Please?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, there's a lot of things been said from Mr. Gardner to Councilman Norick, Councilman Keller. I made a timeline. You can't just blow things in and out and say things. I spent multiple phone calls down at the state. And I want to go through this timeline. And what I was hoping is firstly do that, and then Mr. Gardner can answer the question. So in the timeline, there's questions. So, from the timeline, we closed the meeting at 12:38 at our last meeting in the morning. We amended the budget. We took a 2/3 vote. So I asked Mr. Colt for it. He said, I texted him October 20th at 3:34 p.m. Not yet. I've got the tax rate funded, but Nikki is out of the office. She knows how you like them the way. So Tuesday, October 31st, this is how this went. I'm going to be transparent to the whole council. I'm not going to point fingers. I'm going to tell you what I've learned. We'll have for Mr. Gardner to answer the question. I'm not going to sit here and accuse. I'm just going to tell you what everything has happened. So I called Councilwoman Keller I asked her if she got a copy of the amended budget. We did. She said no. She suggested we look on Gateway. We both had our laptops. We found that they submitted Mr. Steele's budget and the one that was met with the auditor. At that time, I called Councilwoman Norrick. She didn't answer. She called back. Then she called Councilman President Steele. President Steele says he knows nothing about it, that it's wrong, so he called Auditor Rick Gardner. At that time, he was calling Chief Deputy Todd Culp. They ran up here to see. They couldn't fix it then. Mr. Gardner called at 9:02 a.m. to Mr. Fred Vandrope, whatever. And they opened it back up. At that time, I called the sheriff to make sure his budget was right. And we're discovering that there was no changes made. It was me and Councilwoman Keller looked through the whole budget before I proceeded to ask any more questions or anything, and nothing was changed. So then I called Fred, Mr. Randolph, down. He's the division chief of the DLGF. He stated Mr. Gardner called at 9:02 a.m. Now this is October 31st, remind you, we passed this and made the changes. We did not receive that. Back up 1 second, Councilwoman Norrick, Gardner, there was emails, got everything documented and everything here. Basically what happened was, we didn't want anything else. I got told, an email back from Mr. Gardner that they need to do some things in November's meeting. The only thing I was interested in, and it was cleared by Councilwoman Norrick's email, that we just wanted adopted changes, amended changes that was done, which we should have. It was late. That's the only thing I wanted because that's what we voted on that meeting. Then me and Fred had another conversation. I had a conversation with Councilwoman Norrick on the phone, a three-way call, and also Councilwoman Keller. He's been with the state in over 92 counties. He sees many different budgets. And he said he'd never seen anything like this. So they go back in, they open up back the budget, and at 2:32 p.m., they resubmitted the budget back down to the state. Now, Councilwoman Keller was on the phone with Fred Van Dop, the division chief, and he explained to me what the auditor did. And he's explaining to me the program. It's a lot. And I can show you countless calls, countless minutes, and learning. Because I want cues, I want to know what happened. Because this is dangerous. Let me tell you why it's dangerous. I hope you guys appreciate what I did. Because I don't know what happens. I've listened to the state, DLGF. And they said, if you didn't catch this after November 8th, and this passed down there, which at that time, Rick didn't know it was, Mr. Gardner didn't know it was not changed. At that time, everything happened all at once, I think. You got a hold of him on October 31st, he didn't realize what happened, what he said, the information I get. So if this would have went through, we would have had to spend countless hours, countless meetings next, because you can't fix something after November 8th until that following January.
Right.
So we avoided a train wreck. We have to redo the ordinances and everything else. Now, I requested something that should have been gave to the council. And there's no reason he said I shouldn't have got it. I had Mr. Culp tell me I'm going to get it. And now later on, the emails are all, any council members forward emails to Mr. Gardner. The bottom line is, I'm not trying to, this was a dangerous and a lot of work situation. I don't know what happened here. But we need to figure it out. because this ain't right. Some of this is unacceptable. I asked for it adopted, what we amended that budget that night. That should have been easy, as Fred said, as they should have got in there and they could have emailed it to you. Now, what Mr. Gardner said, from what I understand from Fred, is in the workbook, you make adopted, they do, and this is where Councilwoman Norick and everybody was, so this is what he explained to me today. Here's my phone call today. I show everyone. You have, when the workshop started, you have all these budgets that 45 million got sent down by the DLGF, by Mr. Gardner's office. They start off with this presented budget. What they did that broke the ODL law that I brought up last meeting, in a series of meetings that took place at Councilsville, that happened that week.
Of 3 people.
Okay, that's still several times. That's still under the law, several meeting law.
Yeah. 3 people.
That's, I'm not talking quorum.
No,
I'm talking about quorum.
That's not correct.
Well, then you're calling the lawyers wrong.
Well,
Okay.
we have our lawyer.
Yeah, which was here 2 different times. We had one last week, now he's here. But I'm just going through the timeline and then I'm done. Now, I asked for something and the chief deputy auditor told me I was going to get it. I did not get it. I voted on that. I don't care what made changes in November. We're downplaying this like, and I believe I called Ken from the newspaper. Now, we all have to know this budget process. We all got to work together. But I will not, and the only alternative Fred said I had if this was back passed is file legal action. And obviously, Mr. Gardner did not know what he submitted. And when let me explain this, what the workbook is in your sense that no one else can learn it. He went through 35 minutes today, what you actually got to do. So they got the column over here. And the DLGF form or whatever on the computer. So the presented budget, you take over from the long item. Nothing needs to be submitted besides what you presented, the 43.5 or the 45 that was advertised million to the DLGF. After that, nothing can be submitted until after the adoption of the budget, Fred said. So that night that it took to amend it, they go in, it's a few keystrokes. You take it over from the presented and what was adopted. Now, obviously, there was nothing done. You can't convince me that the timeline of this from 1:32 the next day that you submitted a budget, you got in at probably 8 in the morning. It was a late night. So 5.5 hours later, there was nothing done in the budget. The first budget submitted, which was Mr. Steele's proposal and whatever Rick Gardner's you guys met, done whatever. So, only thing I'm asking you is what happened? Because I'm getting different from DLGF and I'm getting different from our auditor. So that's my big question. How did we get here? That's all I'm wanting. I'm not going to accuse you. I gave the timeline information I got. I didn't go, so that's the only question. You're saying a different story than what Fred said.
Quite
The chief executive.
Quite frankly, I don't know what you've said here in the last 10 minutes, but with that said, I've explained it to you. You said a few keystrokes. What do you mean by that?
I'm saying you go in, you have the presented budget, and you guys, that's why you have the ODL law, which you should have known being a prior councilman. Obviously, some people broke the law then.
What's your question?
The question is, you asked me, what do I mean? So you go up to the presented budget, by a few keystrokes, you take that presented budget and then what was cutted or whatever had exactly, you made a budget and sent it down. The 43.5 was submitted. The LGF saw that. Fred was looking at it with me on the phone. So you submitted raw budget with the 43.5. They don't look at line items, he says. They just look at the bottom line number.
Thank you. That answers the question. They don't look, the DLGF does not look at the line item budget. They look at forms 3 and 4. they don't even look at the others. The only reason for going back to Form 1, which we have every intention of doing, was when you called and asked for the budget from us, we were still working in Lao. We were still working in our
I
life.
want the budget. I just wondered what we adopted, or that amendments we did that night.
That's a separate question. I mean, you're asking
Yeah, you're
multiple questions with, I
Well,
mean,
it's a lot, but everyone will blurt out everything.
Well, you're saying a few keystrokes and you just bring the budget over and upload it. That's false.
It's
That's
not the budget, the line items. You take it over
we
proposed,
had multiple.
over to the adopted.
false. That's false.
Well, then.
You don't understand what your
No,
conversation.
that's
I'm
true
not
that
done
you
yet.
can copy and paste it, but it wouldn't have worked because the proposed and what we adopted was so different. He would have had to go in
Exactly.
and individually
They
change
did theirs
things.
with the 40, it said they submitted the 43.5, and so they made cut.
Your
how
budget ordinance, the reason we told you the night of the budget adoption that you could not change it by a penny was because your budget ordinance was already spit out from a gateway based on entries that was leading up to the meeting. That's what I've tried to tell you. Leading up to the meeting, forms 1, 2, 3, 4, all those have to be done prior to the meeting, and then you're going to get your budget ordinance. The reason your budget could not change by 1 cent is because you would not have a ordinance that would represent what you passed at that 43.5, because they're looking at the whole number. Now the public piece of it, the Form 1, that's what generates all that,
That's what he said,
and it gets you to that 43.5. Okay, so if you change,
because you have to make changes to the cuts down to 43.5, correct? Right.
well, yeah, you have to
Yeah.
pass what that adopted ordinance says on that night. So you can make all these other changes you want to, which you did, hundreds of them, but you're still at 43.5. So your budget ordinance, you would have had to if you remember, we talked about re-advertising, having another meeting, all that, but the timeline didn't allow for that because you have a public hearing, 10 days between the public hearing and the adoption date, and then you're past the November 1st, right?
Well, let me ask you.
But when you're saying a couple clicks and move stuff over, that's incorrect. What we done was took your spreadsheet that you passed that night, and we entered every single line, one by one, into our financial software.
Then how did the wrong budget get set down?
You're not listening.
I think, Rick, where we have a problem is the fact, I get that.
I'd like to finish my story if I could. Rob, would you allow me to do that?
please, just,
Okay,
I think we've spent.
we've spent enough time
Well,
on it because
I
it
really want to
doesn't make
learn
any
as much here. I
sense.
didn't want to accuse. I want to learn, I'm hearing what he
Okay,
said.
all
if you let me
learned it.
finish, I'll be able to tell you that. So when we got your spreadsheet that night, we have a bunch of work to do.
You said spreadsheet.
Your spreadsheet, you're calling it a workbook,
I'm not calling
the
it. a mayor.
spreadsheet. So the
Amendments we made.
the spreadsheet that we created, a tool for you guys to use. That's something we do for you. We don't have to create that spreadsheet. We'll just take the budget in, print them out, and give them to you, and you can do your budget. It doesn't matter to us. We try to help you.
We should have
Is there a
got,
question?
really at the end of the meeting, we should have got what we voted on. Because
That's, okay, if
Because
that
Todd called,
is
set
your,
up there and change it up there, and here's the thing, I wanna make sure what we voted on that night, as a council member, the changes was made, he made those changes right there.
I
And Fred
understand
said
that.
all you had to do is email it to us.
in the future, if you ask somebody for something, I think, I mean, Jody's come to me when she didn't get stuff. Please,
I did have 2 years prior to this, I didn't have a problem. This is the first, Ken out there said something about, and you guys totally
that's
ignored it.
what's working together means.
I-
We can
and
work
I'm
together and
trying.
just ask.
But
I'd like to go ahead and finish if I could.
Yes.
So when you guys made all your changes that night, 700 changes or however many hundred it was, I didn't count them. Why are you laughing?
because I don't think it was that.
Well, you changed almost every pay line. There's 700 and something employees, so it's more than 700 then. I don't know. So after you make all those changes, we go to our financial software. You don't just download that down in your
It's
financial.
not about
Can I
downloading.
finish, please? I know, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You're not listening. You said click a couple buttons. It's not click a couple
He said
buttons.
move it over into different departments, exactly the words. You go to each department.
You're
you move
misunderstanding what Mr. Van Dorp has told you.
over. Well,
So
then we need
if
to
you
have a
let
meeting
me
with-
finish, I'll tell you the process, and I'll tell you why it even took longer. Normally, leading up to the budget, we would go through all the gateway process, lead up to the budget, print out a budget ordinance based on all that work. Well, that work had to be redone after you had your 7-hour meeting. All that work had to be redone. The way it's redone is we took what you done in your spreadsheet that night, while we're juggling things you guys are wanting and trying to do our work that has to be done. We took your spreadsheet, we entered that into Lao Financial. Okay, if you look at you're talking about timelines. If you look at the timeline when we put that in Lao Financial, we weren't done or barely done with the tax rates by the time you asked. We weren't far enough along that we could upload into Gateway again. Then when we got ready to upload into Gateway, the system will not allow you to upload a flat file in and change that on the changes you made that night on the adoption date. So therefore, we had to go through every single line and enter them by hand in every category and all 50 budgets. You didn't just pass the general fund budget. There's 50 budgets you passed. So in every one of those line items, we had to check every single one of them because we went back into Lao Financial is where we go first. So your budget that you're claiming that was up at the state that we had not changed yet was already in Lao Financial, the very one that you passed by the time you ask. Our next stop is Gateway to correct all those lines. We could not upload that again because the system would not allow you to upload it, so we had to go into Gateway now, and those however many lines, 700 and something employees plus everything else in 50 budgets, now we had to manually enter those into Gateway to make those changes. It wasn't as simple as pushing a button and uploading it. We had to change the whole thing, but we're not going to put it into Gateway without making the changes and checking it and double checking it to your spreadsheet, the Lao Financial, and then to Gateway.
You're talking about a lot of time here, Mr. Gardner. You submitted at 1:32 the next day. You didn't even know what happened until you got a phone call from the council president. Then you
we're still working on
to come up there and try to change
we're
it.
sticking
Councilman Vaughn.
Hold on, no, don't interrupt me, sir. Please
You're
don't.
out of order.
I'm not out of order.
You are.
I asked a question, we had a discussion, I have the floor, so you let him interrupt any time he wants.
Could I ask a question at some point here? What authority do you think you have over my reporting?
What authority do you think you have, sir?
I'm not asking for any authority
I passed a
other than
budget
what.
I couldn't even get. I'm gonna have to next time, obviously from now on, since you're in office,
What authority?
to have a public asset.
What authority do you have over the auditor, the treasurer, the surveyor, the judges? What authority do you think you
What
have?
authority do you think I'm doing, sir?
I don't know what you're doing.
Well, you're
making a big political
What
statement.
authority am I trying to have?
Gentlemen, can we stick with the issues and our
Well,
job as a council?
I would agree.
Because we've gone farther, and I got with Rick, Jody, and, I said we made some mistakes as far as timing on our budget, in the way we handled it, and we're going to get together after January and do some lessons learned. We're going to work on that for next year. Your request, Mr. Vaughn, about getting what you wanted, I can't speak to why they didn't. Let's get that out. I thought it had been sent out. Nobody said that they weren't getting anything from you.
Council, so I think the mix-up. I knew workbooks.
I understand.
I
You
just
keep
wanted
going
what
back
we
to that, but
voted
you're
on
asking.
that night. That's it. And
That's-
he could have done that.
What you
We
got
could
sent
have,
to
and
you
I'm
is what
asking
you
that he-
voted on that night. You
He
didn't.
put it in a workbook and saved it.
You didn't vote on an Excel spreadsheet. You voted on numbers that night and approved numbers, and you got those approved numbers.
Okay.
No, not until later. A lot later.
Okay. Thank you.
When we were finished with them.
Fred said you could have uploaded what you did that night. We voted on amended on that meeting. All you had to do is email us that. It was a general fund and public safety because you had to change the sheriff retirement.
There was 50 budgets to do,
I don't
not
want
2.
50 budgets.
Well,
I'm responsible for 50
I'm
budgets.
not talking about you, Rick. I'm talking about what this council voted on that night of the.
And that is what you got when I sent it to you.
It's not the.
I can play this game
Amendments
too.
made of what we voted on. We didn't change every single budget. I wanted what we changed.
You got them.
Yeah, way later what I asked for. Your chief deputy said they were ready,
That's a complaint.
right here.
Mr. Vaughn, that.
The tax funds are ready, not the other 50 that we had to continue on. You were
He said I'd
interrupting
have
our
Monday. He
work.
was out of town on the 20th and said I have a Monday. Said
I don't know what he told you, but I know we had
Give me
50
the
more.
tax
I don't
number.
care.
Well, I like to
Can-
stick with facts.
That is the fact. There was 50 budgets that you vote on. You don't vote on 2 budgets. And after 3 years sitting in that seat and you don't get it yet, that's a
Not
problem.
like you've been in 7 years, you don't.
That's a problem.
All
Point
right,
of
can we
order,
take the
guys.
personal, look, we need to,
You're literate.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Vaughn,
Rick,
I'm illiterate? Are you really saying that?
I say computer illiterate.
Weren't you?
let
guys,
Rick.
guys,
President
No,
this is
no,
not-
you want to
okay.
stop me short of it.
This is not
It's not worth
productive.
it. It's not worth it. Let's continue
Oh,
on.
it seems to be
without-
partially my meeting because you're certainly drawing me into it.
You
Rick,
try your
Rick.
drill to me. You put yourself in everything.
Okay.
So,
So-
Can we?
I'm not
There's a
answering.
I
motion-
just
There's a
wanted-
motion on the table to amend. Do you have an amendment to present? Can we postpone till they can get
I
something?
If
just
someone
want to know,
wants
moving
move to table
forward.
this, and she can propose an amendment for next week that will at least get us to the next line item.
You mean next year?
I'd make a motion to
Moving
postpone
forward, we cannot,
consideration of the
point of
minutes.
order, you cannot end discussion without a 2/3 majority vote, and I still have
I'm
something I
not
want to
ending
say.
discussion. President Steele, I was in the middle of making a motion.
Please continue with your motion.
A motion does not end discussion. So I would like to make a motion that we postpone consideration of the minutes until the next meeting.
I would just like to know
Second.
what we're going to do in the future to make sure that only accurate records are submitted to the state. Like, moving forward, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again?
And Rick, I think that the reason that we have concern is because we're told that you have 5 days to make those edits in the system. And it was sent down the same day without any edits. And that's concerning to us, why those
Well,
edits
I
weren't made
think
before
Rick-
it was submitted.
Also has a different, I mean, his absolute was the 8th. It was 7 days after the
Here's
first.
the
That's
bottom
not
line. Here's what
true.
here's
The
what.
deadline is
Here's-
to adopt the budget is November 1st. And then
Right.
after that, you have 5 business days to get it in Gateway, which
Right.
gets us to November 8th. So
Right.
your deadline really wasn't November 8th. It was 5 business days past our meeting. You just were lucky that the DLGF opened it back up for you, because if it hadn't been done before November 8th, we would have been stuck with that budget next year.
You would not
According
been
to the
stuck with that
DLGF,
budget.
that is what they told me.
Next year. Here's what it says on my Gateway screen on Form 1. The data for this form has been locked. Please send an email to Gateway DLGF to request that your form be unlocked. That's so you can go in and make changes if you need to under extreme circumstances like this. You're talking about a whole budget cycle that you chose to happen really after the adoption, because you made all the changes on that night. So all that work had to be done afterwards. I don't know how many different ways to explain it, and I'm kind of tired of explaining it.
Can we move, you've got a motion to amend? Do
I
you
still
have an
don't know what
amendment?
we're doing so it doesn't happen again.
Count, President,
Well,
so
I
we
think
need
what
a,
we need
can
to
we-
do to not have this happen again, as a council, we need to have our budget, as we need to work
Yes.
together on a budget
Yeah,
ahead
right.
of time. And
we need
the
to have
month
public
before-
meetings.
the month before that passing of that budget, we should have already had a public meeting with our department heads so that we can communicate that budget and work at it as a group, so that when it comes time for that adoption process the month after, we're ready to go.
Yeah, I agree, and that was a point taken out of last month's meeting.
And
And
President
it was a
Steele.
little different than.
You know what we're
we've been advised.
told on a regular basis when we go to conferences? Meet your deadlines to submit. You can always open back up and add to them. That's a common statement from the SBOA when it comes to reporting. Common statement. Right there on the Gateway Form 1, it says, hey, if you need to make changes, send us an email to DLGF. Let me tell you exactly what it says, because I don't know. Please send an email to gateway@dlgf.in.gov to request that your form be unlocked. That's so you can make changes. It's right on the
Like if you
form.
mess up like a typo on 1 or 2 lines, not be
No,
able to
that's not what
do
it
a whole
means.
nother
Pre-
budget.
Well, you
President
didn't
Steele.
email, you called at 9:02 a.m.
President Steele.
It's
I sent an
recognized
email
that
to the DLGF.
So he's a liar.
The motion,
I'm tired of you calling me a liar.
You're saying he's the liar.
The
You're
motion
saying.
that I made that was
I'm not the one that's
seconded
been in jail for voter fraud.
would
Well, you haven't been caught yet. You got a lot
Mr.
more
Gardner.
problem. You may go there,
the,
buddy.
the
Mr.
motion,
Vaughn, can we?
You're correct.
We're gonna have
Mr.
problems.
President,
What?
we have
Mr.
completely lost
Vaughn,
the quorum
yeah.
here. This is getting
this
ridiculous.
is ridiculous.
See what we're
Did you
doing?
actually just call me a crook in
Did
public?
you just ask me to say I went to jail and I'm expunged?
I'm sorry?
I'm expunged.
President
You
Steele.
just brought
Guys,
up.
that doesn't mean you
Tonight,
didn't do
we
it.
allow-
The
Well,
personal
you get to do
attacks
it, I
have got
can't.
to stop. Mr. Vaughn,
He's-
please direct, Mr. Vaughn, ignore.
It's hard to ignore him, not.
The President Steele, the motion that I made that was seconded by Mr. Emery would allow time for anyone wishing to type something up to amend the minutes from that last meeting. It would allow time for them to do that. That way, if there's a motion to amend, we would actually have something to consider. So, in the hopes that we could actually get past what the fourth item on our agenda tonight, I would ask that perhaps we just vote to delay consideration of this as the motion that I made until the next meeting, and that gives time for people to do something productive as opposed to what's been happening here.
Call for the
Yep.
question.
Can you repeat the motion to?
The motion
Postpone.
was to delay consideration.
Or just table it.
Yeah, postpone the minutes until next meeting.
Lay
Okay.
question table, but it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so point of order, you can't call for the question without 2/3 majority vote. So is there anything anybody else wants to say before we vote?
I should hope
I
not. We've
think-
been here an hour.
Right.
Any question?
I would be willing to type something up for the January meeting.
Anybody else?
For the minutes.
With input, please provide in written form to Rick any suggestions, recommendations you may have. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of the agenda as presented.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mr. Emery. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I won't give any comments. We've had enough already. Auditor's report, you see a written in front of you. You want to add anything to that, Mr. Gardner?
Yes, I have plenty to add. So you're looking at cash balance of funds, basically is what I wanted to cover with you tonight. Your general fund's sitting at 3.3 million and change. That general fund number looks to be at $11.1 million at the end of the year, after settlement, which will take place here in a few weeks. The rainy day fund is setting at $10,515,000, and with interest added, that's going to be at about 10.6. Depending on the that could be off by about 40,000 just because I'm not sure when Dan posts his interest. So so public safety fund setting at 1.1 million. That correctional lit, which will be what you'll use when you determine the jail build and what happens there. That's 10 million, $17,000. Your group insurance is sitting at 2.6 million with 1.047 in the reserve fund. So what we're asking tonight is two resolutions, actually. One is concerning the insurance reserve fund and asking that $1.5 million be moved to the insurance reserve fund from the claims account. And then $550,000 moving from the general fund to the rainy day fund, which will still put you at 10.5 million at the end of the year in the general fund balance.
Rick, I got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
So the group insurance line item, that's, so the commissioners get insurance money in their budget, and then that money is $450,000, I think it is, it's moved into the group insurance fund, correct?
Yes, monthly from their budget into the group insurance.
And that's
fund.
what this 2.6 million is?
That's the balance today, yes.
And then you're wanting to take, I believe it was, what did you say, 1.5?
1.5 million and
Out
put
of
it
the
in the
group
reserve.
and put it into the reserve?
Yes.
Okay.
Talk to the commissioners about that. They're, well, at least the commissioner president, he's comfortable with that number. I went back and looked at 2013 through 2022, and to date in 2023,
and determined that with that 10-year average, we would be leaving enough in that fund. They made some changes in the insurance reserve fund or insurance program this last year that allowed that to build a little bit. So we did have to take $975,000 from that reserve. I don't remember if it was last year. Yeah, it was probably in 2022 to meet our needs that year. With those changes they've made, that you have gained some ground in the insurance fund. The number you were talking about, the $450,000 that comes from the commissioner's budget, that is just the commissioner's portion or the county's portion, taxpayers' portion. Also, what goes into that fund is what comes out of everybody's check daily. So hitting that general rule again of 25% rule, 1.8 million would be a proper reserve. You could bump that up a little bit, but one thing you got to be careful with on insurance reserves is you're charging the county taxpayers for that insurance, and you're also charging the county employees for that insurance. And if you're gaining too much ground over time, then you really either your benefit plan needs increased or your premiums need to go down, because it's not a savings account on the backs of the employees or on the backs of the taxpayers. So having a sufficient reserve makes a lot of sense, but to have millions and millions of dollars in there does not. You would be really overcharging the taxpayer and the employees for their insurance if you're gaining very much ground there.
Well, and I don't think I agree with you on that, just for the fact that I would like to see that reserve fund increase more, because I would like to see us be able to lower the cost for our employees, number one, and I'd also like us to be able to see, I mean, I've not heard anything good about our insurance from any employee yet, and I think it's something that and I understand it's a commissioner job, but if we could lower the cost to our employees, I think that would be substantially great, and be able to maybe lower the amount that we have to fund every year in order to fund that, I think would also be a positive plus. And I don't think any employee would complain about having to lower their cost.
And Rick, just for clarification, I think that maybe you guys were kind of saying the same thing, just a different way. If we get the insurance reserve fund to that 20% level, that is when our auditor was saying, we don't want to continue to lump more into that, because that's we're taking money from the employees to continue to build that higher than what it needs. Instead, we could lower what the employees are contributing, because we would not need to be building that reserve fund anymore at that point. So that would reduce the cost to the employees.
So you're saying that when we get to 1.8 million, that we can reduce the cost to the employees?
I'm not speaking for the commissioners. What I'm saying is your threshold at 25% is $1.8 million. You're gonna be there if you make that transfer or thereabout. What did I say that balance was?
It's 1.5.
1.5.
I thought that's what it was.
Yeah, 1.5. So you're gonna be at $2.5 million, which will be over that 25% threshold. But you got to realize that the commissioner's budget in their budget, and you guys cut that budget line item actually by $100,000. So if you're wanting to build a reserve, really the route to do it would be from the commissioner's portion and the employee's portion. And then you have claims. We're self-insured, so I went back 10 years and looked at claims over a 10-year period, and the average the average 10-year cost on receipts for payments on the insurance from 2013 through 2022. $7.4 million, 7.443 with that's the receipts coming in, and the expenses going out is $7.4 million. So it's almost a wash because of the changes the commissioners made this last year. Is the only reason you've gained ground there. It usually is a wash over time. Now, of course, in 22 the amount was higher, so healthcare costs are up. So I'm not an analyst on that, but that would be up to the commissioners, because when the commissioners put that out for bid, they look at what do you have in your reserve fund for backup, what do you what are your employees going to participate, what's the county's going to participate, and if you cut the county's portion, of course, you're going to affect that too. What that mix should be with the employees in the county, taxpayers' portion, I don't know. You'd have to talk to commissioners about that. But I think we are saying the same thing. But I do not think you build your reserve fund at a high amount just simply because you're overcharging for the insurance people are getting then.
Well, I'd agree if we're taking the money to build it up out of the group insurance fund line, because that is a portion of that is put in there by the employees' premiums.
Right.
So yeah, if we're taking money out of the group insurance fund, I agree, we're doing that on the backs. I'm saying that if we have extra money through the year, the money that we appropriate towards insurance on the commissioner's line item, that if we're taking that money and putting it into the reserve fund,
Right.
that is a good thing, because then at some point we should be able to lower the cost premium to our employees, because the insurance company should look at it and say, hey, you've got a decent reserve fund there to pay for these claims if it has to be.
And that's exactly what we do, if the money's there. But like I said, the receipts were in the past were $7.4 million, and the expenses were $7.4 million, so you didn't have any money left. They've made changes in that plan, which caused you to have more left. So now the natural flow of things is commissioners put their money in the 5200 fund, employees on payroll day put their money in the fund, and then they pay all the claims. And then at the end of the year, if there's money left, that would go to the reserve fund. That's the natural flow of things already. It wouldn't be a new thing. It's what we would already be doing.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is that at the end of the day, I'm glad we're doing this. We're putting that money in there, obviously, but I would like to see us as a council trying to build that up, whether it be from excess funds that we have from the general fund or something else that we can put more reserve into the insurance fund. I've mentioned that before, that I think it's something that we need to take a look at. So
I want to weigh in this 1 second. All I can tell you, the city of Anderson, I'm on that plan. They're both self-insured. They both got the same amount of employees, and we're sitting with the reserve fund almost $23 million today.
Can I add something to that real quick?
No, you're not.
Madison County.
You're out of order.
She's saying over $16,000.
You're out of order.
It's not an insurance.
So anyway, that's all.
So basically, well, no use in repeating it. We're already.
You want to go to the resolution since we're there?
That's
You're
okay.
presenting them?
well, I do have a question about the other resolution.
Okay, yeah,
Sorry.
that's what I asked.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't
I
have-
apologize.
We were on the auditor's report.
I'm sorry?
I thought we were on the auditor's.
We are.
We are.
We are.
Okay.
But he's talking about the two resolutions.
So the other resolution that we're talking about putting money in the rainy day fund, couple things that I wanted to mention. One is, we have already talked about putting in an insurance fund instead, because I know our rainy day fund is very healthy. The other thing is, I know that Elwood, with the money that they got from the wind farm, I don't remember the numbers, and I apologize,
around
but I think it was,
$400,000 that
I
we
think
owed
it's
them.
about $400,000 that we still owe them, that we borrowed in order to do the repairs on the elevators at the courthouse here. I've talked with Rob Sparks, and they would like to have that money, at least by January. So I want to make sure that we're going to have money left over at the end of the year to be able to facilitate that. And if not, then we need to probably look at taking this 550, taking 400,000 of that to be able to give back to Elwood for the wind farm money that they're entitled to.
Is there a specific, wasn't there interest generating, I forget what the,
On the rainy day fund?
550,000, yeah, in rainy day fund transfer?
Yes. To my knowledge, there's never been any borrowing from the wind farm. The county council elected to repair their elevators with wind farm money at the tune of about 400,000. I don't know who actually said that or where it came from, but to my knowledge, that money was never borrowed from the wind farm. I've heard that narrative, but that is not accurate, because if you borrowed from a fund, you have to pay that fund back by year end. So there wasn't any borrowing. If there was a resolution or an ordinance that says we hereby borrow $400,000 and we're going to pay it back, it would have had to been paid back by December 31st of that year. It's the way it works.
So it was $1 million, I believe, that was supposed to be in the wind farm fund, correct? originally.
I don't know what yeah, it was $1 million or more.
It was $1 million, and we just gave them, I don't recall how much we gave them.
$502,000.
$502,000. And it's my understanding that they're entitled to the rest, the balance of that.
They're not entitled to anything. It would be a decision of the council as to whether we wanted to grant them that addition.
The council voted to give them what was in the account, which was, I think, $505,000. But again, the council did not borrow money from that account to pay for the elevators. This council deliberated and got council involved from both the council and the commissioners. Discussions were had, and it was determined that the money could be utilized to pay for the elevator repair at that time, which the county did not have the money to do. So it was utilized for an elevator repair at that time. There was no borrowing from the funds. Again, there was a lot of discussions going into that. And it was decided that, yes, we could use that funding to repair the elevators, and that's what action was taken.
All I know is I'm being told that I'm being told that that money was supposed to be utilized for the north part of the county.
I've been told that by several people as well, and I've clarified that with them. I was on the council when that happened and told them that at no time was that a borrow. The term borrowing was never used. That was never indicated. Some folks were very upset that we utilized the funds for that. But again, at the time, the county courthouse services northern Madison County the same as it does the rest of the county. And that's kind of what it was determined through a lot of discussions. And again, it was discussed and decided and voted on to utilize the funds to pay for that elevator repair at that time.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear then on the stance of the council then is that that money's gone from the wind farm and that's it.
Yes, we voted and approved for $505,000, which was the remaining balance.
Right, I understand
of that wind fund farm. And I spoke to Mr. Sparks and had that conversation with him prior to that meeting and told him exactly where I stood on that. And he said, well, maybe at a later date we can talk into giving us that money back. And I said, I can't speak what future councilors are going to do or not do, but I can just tell you that the 505 is all that's in the account, and that's all that's available.
Okay.
Councilor, is that all we're ever going to get from that? That's done.
That's done. It's over with. It's a one-time thing.
It's a one-time thing. Okay.
If you look at your balance in your rainy day fund, if you were to move that 550,000 over, you're going to be looking at year end, including interest, $11,153,000. Okay, if you take your general fund budget that you passed, which was a couple $1 million bigger than last year's, and your actually about $3 million larger, and your public safety fund, and add those together, you're at $47.5 million. If you use the 25% rule on what you need in reserves, since your budget has increased in the general fund and the public safety fund combined together, that 25% number is now $11,850,000, not $10 million. So that would be the general rule. I have been got some input from Baker Tilly that I'd like to share, and I haven't had time to look at it a whole lot, but here's one of the statements. What we've been working toward for the last few years is paying down debt, saving back money, controlling our budget, all those things play into our bond rating. Just like your personal credit rating, you don't have a whole lot of debt, you pay your bills on time, all those things play into your credit rating. So it's no different for the county. We want our financial picture to be the best it can possibly be. And that's what we've been working toward the last several years. Some of you guys just got on the council recently, and I've tried to reiterate that time and time again because it's important that we have the best rating we can possibly have. We didn't have that picture 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It was lucky if we had $8 million left at the end of the year, $36,000 in a rainy day fund, had debt. Our debts, I didn't check it today to see where we were at because I didn't do that report, but $5 million, a little over $5 million in debt. Matter of fact, one of the financial advisors I talked to recently about another issue, and he was looking at our finances and he just kind of scoffed and said, well, you guys don't have very much debt, which is a positive. And I'm assuming you guys would agree with that. But now you're at the 11,850. But here's the statement I got from financial advisor. Just do a quick assessment. And it says, assuming the county's reserves exceed 15% and has a cash basis accounting, then a reserve across operating funds that exceeds 30% would place the county at its highest assessment. Meaning if you have 30% put back, you're going to get the best rating you can get under the circumstances. So this is what we've been working for several years, is to get where we are today. It's a big deal. The county has come a long way in a few years. Not to mention a remediation of a county building that was millions of dollars, $6 million. I don't remember what it was at this point. I'd have to go back and look. We built a bridge and paid cash for it. That was $3.75 million. It was a Tiger grant, paid the rest of it, but we came up with and budgeted $1.25 million a year for 3 years in order to pay for a bridge, so we didn't have debt. We went through it before. We paid off the Star Bank building, the MCCC dispatch center. All those things are paid off, and our debt is very low. And our cash balance in our reserve fund is, if you approve this tonight, $11.1 million. It's a good thing. I don't know.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, Rick. I don't. I think it's great that we have a savings account. I just want to make sure that the council is thinking about some other places that we could possibly be saving that money back, whether it be capital improvements for the county or different things like that. I'm not talking about spending it.
I would agree. You're not at your 25% yet. Since you increased the budget in this budget cycle, you're not even at your 25% now. You're below your 25%. Now, capital improvements, yes. What is that number? Well, the general rule is 20% again. So 20% of what number? It's an enormous number, your capital assets. So you're not there, but you got to get here. You got to start somewhere, and this is where we chose to start, by paying off debt, increasing our cash balance in our rainy day fund, and we're setting in a good spot, the best spot that I know of that the county's ever been in its history. So,
Any other questions on the request for insurance reserve fund or rainy day fund transfers? What's that? Yeah. I'll entertain a motion for resolution 2023-11A.
Move to
for
approve.
moving the insurance claims fund of $1.5 million.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by
Roll call vote.
Mr. Emery. Any other discussion, questions? Let's have a roll call vote, please. Robin,
Tell me who made the motion, who seconded it?
Mr. Gale, and Emery. Misters.
Councilwoman Norick,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens. Yes. Councilman Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilman Emery,
Yes.
President Steele.
Yes. Passes 7-0. The second resolution, 2023-11B, is for the rainy day fund to move $550,000 from the general fund.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mrs. Likens. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 7-0.
Do we skip the new business?
Yeah, what about the AIC certificates?
I did. Just because we were talking about it, we back up to new business on AIC certificates by Mrs. Likens.
Okay, on a good note, I received an email from Jackie Clements, the Director of Planning and Professional Development for AIC, which is Association of Indiana Counties. And we talked briefly about doing this last year, and finally we get an opportunity to do this. We'd like to recognize the continuing education recipients. Our first recipient at the conference was Mrs. Angie Abel for her graduation certificate, and I have a copy of that here. The second one would be for Deputy Auditor Patty Mock with her graduation certificate. Third is Deputy Auditor Robin Wagner, a graduation certificate. And the last one is for Auditor Rick Gardner for the Silver Master Award. We just wanted to recognize those and thank you for all your hard work and dedication. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to skip around. Next, we have transfers, beginning with the treasurer's office. I don't know if I remember, submitted request for transfers for end-of-year expenses to include your year-end expenses and monitors.
Make a motion to approve.
Second it.
Been moved by Mr. Gale and seconded by Mrs. Norick. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Second is the sheriff and jail.
Good evening, Doug Belts, Madison County Sheriff's Department. No, I'm not the sheriff. So we just have some transfers. The first one's going to be out of the sheriff's budget, requesting to transfer $34,000 from extradition to 3 separate line items. The first one for the $17,000 other supplies, that's going to help provide funding for uniforms and replace our bulletproof vests that need replaced. The other line is our 3200 line. That will be for the civil office needs additional postage with everything they're required to mail out, and that should get them through the rest of the year. And the last one is the machinery and equipment, the $15,000, and that is for to finish some equipment installs for 3 of our police cars, and also to finish out the installs of 6 bulletproof windshields that were approved earlier this year.
Make a motion to approve?
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
We can still, yeah.
Is that fine? Okay. I wanted a little clarification. I watched the meeting where this occurred in August. I think $41,746 and change in new money was requested for extradition. And I think Councilwoman Norick asked if that was needed. And at that time, all of that would be needed. And then in October, $6,000 was transferred out of that. And now you're transferring $34,000 out. I was just double checking that initially if you requested 41, and I understand it wasn't you that requested that, but if the 41,000 was requested, that now basically none of that is needed, or perhaps there's more in the
Unfortunately, I don't have an
fund?
answer for that. That
Okay.
just was the request that was made to be able to transfer that. Not knowing as far as where and when we'll have to go out and get inmates as far as the expenses with those.
I know, I spoke to Sheriff Beeman about this
Okay.
back a couple months ago, when this is one of those, it's a guessing game for him, and when he asked for that 41,000, he was just going by the previous months, and he thought by looking at the previous months, they were just trying to give a nice number to come up with what expeditions may be, but he said that could be higher or lower according to what actually they had going on. It sounds like you didn't have many, so.
No,
yeah,
I
that's-
appreciate that
yeah,
you're
it's-
transferred. I
yeah.
don't mean that at all. I was
Yeah.
just asking. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
I had a question on that too, and I hadn't
Thank
had a
you.
chance to talk to the sheriff.
Okay. Thank you.
Your second bit of this?
Yes,
From
the
the
other
jail.
transfers is from the jail budget. That's basically, from pay lines where we do not have employees that are filling those. It's just transferring those funds to other things. So,
Get you through the end of the year on we actually got another request for new monies.
yes, so out of the
Later,
jail lines, that's pay medicine. It's kind of unavoidable, and the dental expenses, and that should get us hopefully through the rest of the year for those expenses.
I think Sheriff Beeman did say that he thought that was going to be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Luckily, we have some to transfer out, 27,000 of it.
And on that note, Councilman Still, remember when the sheriff first took over, the first 3 or 4 months, it was hovering around 200, now it's hovering around 300, so how quick that changed.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Emery, seconded by Mr. Vaughn for the transfers from sheriff and the jail as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, the Veterans Affairs, I don't see anyone here, but it's $39.99 for some tablets to carry out the end of the year.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Emery, seconded by Mr. Vaughn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, or nay.
Motion carries. Mr. Strange, I don't know, there's some planning. Anybody from planning? It's also there were some refund of conference fees and fuel.
What is he on? Strange?
Make a motion to approve.
Planning Department.
I'll second.
Been moved by Mr. Emery, seconded by Mr. Gale for the Planning Department transfer as presented. Any question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And Mr. Kidder did send an email that he was going to have a family conflict tonight.
I can kind of talk to the $2,600
Please.
one. Well, I found that when we were going through his budget, that he had originally, when he had eliminated some of his part-time money and he had given it to employees, he accidentally put it on the wrong line item. And so I think that's what that $2,600 is, putting it to the proper line item that it's supposed to be on.
Mm-hmm. And the other portion was end-of-year utilities, estimated to carry him through the end of the year.
And he
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is that Jody? I'll give it to Jody.
Actually, I didn't. It was Diana.
Moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mrs. Likens. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And next, Mr. Hunter. These are some transfer some bailiff funds for transcripts and evaluations, and then also some courtroom updates.
Hi.
Speak to.
Good evening. We're scrambling in public defender account. I came in and asked for, I can't remember, $64,000 in new money last month. So we're going to get to the end of the year with our budget, but it's going to be tight. There's just a lot of expenses right now. So transcripts and, psychiatric evaluations, all kinds of things we've talked about before. So we're moving money from line items where we have it available to the public defender account, and then below that, the other transfer there is going into rentals and machinery and equipment. We have a maintenance agreement that we've had to renew. We tried going without the maintenance agreement, but you have to have nothing go wrong. And we had a couple things go wrong, and it's $250 an hour when they bill you. So the maintenance agreement is actually much cheaper. So they've let us go ahead and pay that instead. So anyway, we needed to move some money to do that. So we had money in the other account. So
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mr. Vaughn for the transfer of court admins as presented, court administration. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Soil and water. Okay.
Good evening. Brandy Frazier with Soil and Water. I'm just moving funds from our miscellaneous account to, we bought a computer for our part-time educator, which is the 1229.98, and then the other one's just our gas card. So thought 900 is going to be enough, but I guess it's not for the year.
Make a motion approved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Mr. Emery. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Central Records, a very small request
Make a motion approved.
to complete some yearly contracts of $205. It's been moved by Mr. Vaughn,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Norick. Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is Mr. Dyer with Emergency Management. And this also is an end of year, try to get things squared up.
That's right. The council had the good judgment to approve some vehicle transfers. We decommissioned a couple and got some newer vehicles this year. So our equipment, our repairs and maintenance was a little lower. So we were able to do some other adjustments that are going to pay off for our agency. So I respectfully request transfer of the funds.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Mr. Emery. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Jeff. And next, the prosecutor's office.
I have a question about this one, Rob.
Prosecutors?
Yeah, not about what they're
Jeff?
wanting. No, the prosecutor, what they're doing here.
Don't be messing with Betsy.
No, I'm not messing with her. I was thinking, is this all transferring? Okay, this is what I was confused about, I'm sorry.
This is
So it says general
victims
fund, but then it says prosecutors, victim assistance. Are we transferring money from general fund to prosecutors, victim assistant, or is it all within the
I
same
have
fund?
a very small general fund budget.
Yeah, this is out of her general fund
This
budget.
is the,
Which is the 9602.
Right.
It's its own budget
Right.
within the general
Right.
fund. Yes. So it's not general fund money.
No, I
It's
understand. So it's a miscellaneous fund, right?
No, well, it would be
It's-
just like central records, like emergency management has their budget, and they made a transfer, so they.
Okay, so it's all within that same budget.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were
Yes.
taking something from general fund and or moving it vice versa. Does that make sense, guys, what I'm trying to say? Okay. As clear as mud.
Disagree with it.
it's the.
Sorry.
That's okay. Same type of request, just to kind of ensure that my year end is covered and that I'm able to pay for the things that I need to.
Yeah, you had some grant shortfalls, picking up a
Yeah,
laptop.
and we
some-
anticipate potentially more
End
of
of year
that.
coverage.
And so my hope is to kind of purchase some things. The machinery and equipment will purchase a laptop that will serve our upcoming intern, and then as kind of a backup in case
Make a motion to approve.
one of ours falls through.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Mr. Gale. Any other questions?
I guess it's not really a question, more maybe just a statement, but I'd like to see when we appropriate grants, if there are going to be things that are required by the grant, such as it says, you're purchasing a laptop to support your intern, and that's required by your grant. So when we do appropriate grants, I'd like to see
Sure.
other things that it may cost us that's not covered by the grant, but a
Sure.
requirement
The
of the
use
grant.
of volunteers is covered by the grants.
Okay.
I mean, is it required by the grants?
Okay.
So we have to use people or
I understand.
things.
See.
It's
Okay.
not an actual
It's
expense.
not the laptop that's required, it's the intern
Right.
that's required,
Correct.
but.
The laptop just makes them more functional.
Okay, I understand, thank you.
Thank you.
We didn't vote.
Prosecutor's
We haven't-
office.
we didn't
had-
vote.
Oh, we need a
Okay.
vote.
Did a
All in
first and
favor?
That's right, we had questions. Oh, thanks.
We got a first and second. Go ahead. All in
Yep.
favor?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the prosecutor's transfer from the rainy day fund. Mr. Hannah?
Thank you. This just establishes an intern in the rainy day fund that's committed to the State of Indiana versus Carl Board's several very labor-intensive projects in researching out-of-state cases, and that's a law student completing those projects.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Mr. Gale. Any
So,
other questions?
Is this a new hire? Or
It's a hire within. We have some part-time money left, and we're transferring it to transferring them off of that part-time money and then to the money that's already been appropriated to us within the board's case.
Okay, so it's not a position that would need to go like through the personnel committee?
No, it's simply part-time money that is paid within the amount of money. We just have to create a line item.
Okay.
So it's just the same money that's already been appropriated to us, but it appears as a new money because you have to create a new line item to do it.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
just to be clear, because it's a death penalty case, was that correct?
Yes.
Am I right? There could be, and I don't know, I'm asking you because you're the person doing it. I mean, there could be special things required in death penalty case versus other cases, correct?
Yeah, right. There's a lot of special things that are required, and that's
what I
what.
thought. So there could be some
Yeah.
other things coming down the pipe. You may have to adjust how the trial goes.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Give a
questions?
motion to approve. Oh, Iris.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Council.
Next is the Youth Center, Mrs. Ash. And these also are unused officer lines, or portions of those lines, to cover some year-end operating expenses and utilities.
Yes, it's just food costs. That's where our operational comes from. And then the utilities for the two buildings that I pay utilities on.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Please, go right ahead.
Okay, so that kind of explained it, but in August, when you transferred the 2,000 into that line, and then now you're transferring 10,000 out, is that?
That's correct,
so
yes. So in August, everyone received a raise that was created within our budget. And now I'm moving that because we don't have anybody in that, well, we do now have someone in that line item, and then I'm just moving it so that I don't have to request extra money.
It's just the excess from that line item.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I make a motion.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Norick, seconded by Mrs. Likens. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is the transfer from the Cornerstone Perpetuation Fund
Make
of
a
some
motion. Sorry.
unused line items for a new vehicle.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Mr. Gale. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Next is Central Dispatch, please. And this also covering some longevity, shift overage adjustments, duties, and additional training.
That's correct. Good evening. Jenny Chambers, Madison County Central Dispatch. This is a transfer within our Central Dispatch Fund of unused money from our public safety tech. We currently are under contract with our IT department to provide our it's CAD services basically for our dispatch center. So we are currently under contract with our IT department to provide those types of services for us. So this is unused funds that we would like to transfer to cover us throughout the rest of the year. It will cover our longevity and shift coverage, also additional duties and training for our employees.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
So I have a question. Will this increase their salary for the year, or no, it's just additional funds for different things that, like longevity, like I know you said longevity, but you said something else.
That's correct. Yes, additional duties, if they have assigned additional duties or different tasks. No, it does not increase their salary. It's just going to get us through the end of the year.
Call for question.
Oh, I'm
We
sorry.
already
I thought-
did.
Well, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Health Department, a transfer from COVID Safety and Compliance Fund for sick day payout of a comp time person going to full-time.
Yeah, good evening, Steph Mellinger. I've got two employees that, if you remember correctly, I was here like, I think late summer talking about two employees who accumulated a lot of comp time, particularly over COVID, to nursing supervisors, and we made them exempt, and so we're paying out their comp time.
Motion to approve.
Aye.
Moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mr. Vaughn. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the Highway
Thank you.
Department for Highway and Maintenance Fund and repairs, adjustments to personnel.
Is this
And-
the one we got today?
Yes,
Good
it
evening,
was-
yes.
And Rick or Todd separated that, so we knew
Yeah, I just have to open a different file.
that's what was added.
Yeah, and we apologize for that. This was submitted well ahead of the
He did.
schedule, and it kind of was off cycle, and so it got lost in the mix. So I apologize for the late
That's
notice.
what you get for getting it in early.
I know, that's exactly what happened. So I'm happy to explain it to you. This is making adjustments primarily to reshuffle things in response to the restructuring that we've been doing throughout the course of the year, where we established the new middle management positions. And then, so this adjusts that and allows us to close out the year on those. And then adjust some of the additional costs with the uniform and schooling that was incurred, or that will be incurred as part of the program that we have initiated with the Crossing School.
Is the motion approved?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the highway fund transfers as presented. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Opposed?
Ms. Madison, I'm
Yes,
hearing good
sir.
things about you. You did a good job at Vice Chancellor.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You did that planning, I had one of my friends do that planning, the penalty, or tree planting.
Oh, the tree planting event, yeah.
Oh, Jessica Bastion.
Oh, that was not Jessica Basson, that was all Denise McKee. I was a tag along.
But you did a good job.
But thank you, I appreciate
Miss
that.
Susan, you know, she's on the town.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is a new money request from general fund on behalf of the commissioners. And that is additional liability insurance to get them through the end of the year.
We're off agenda. You're on new money.
New money.
Were you doing, record, or miscellaneous?
So we have recorder first.
Yeah, miscellaneous funds first?
I'm confused.
New money?
Yeah, sorry about that. Bound to happen.
Yeah, she don't need no.
Is it me?
I do it, usually it's
evening.
Mr. Hunter, I switch
Am I out?
around.
Angie Abel, not Abel's,
Thank you.
correction. ABEL.
Are you able to handle this today?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm trying to wake up there. I am out here today to ask for an additional appropriation to our enhanced access, the 1154. It's now sitting at 31,000, and I just did an extension on a 3-year contract for our land records life cycle for Avid that was approved by the commissioners back in August. I'm a little short on that line item. I have plenty of money in the fund, so I'm asking for $20,000 to compensate that.
So you've got 31,000 in there currently, and you need to transfer 20,000 of that to professional services. Is that what you're saying?
No, I have 31,000 that was appropriated, and currently there is $201,000 in the account.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mr. Emery. Any other questions?
So this runs September of 23 through August of 24, so it's just offset from our...
Yes, actually I appropriated it for this past budget, but it's not due till 2024, and it fell at September, so I want to go ahead and get it paid. So I appropriated, or I asked for it in the budget process for 24, but the 23, it's only 31,000 that's sitting there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
But it has to be paid now, and that's why we need the money now.
Exactly. Yes.
Call for question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is the prosecutor's
Okay,
office.
Thank you.
New money for the high-tech crime unit from IPAC funds.
Thank you, Council. This is just again to create a new line item. We're in the process of trying to purchase a vehicle for our high-tech crime unit. That would necessitate a line item to purchase fuel from, and this is what that is.
Your motion approved.
Second.
So you, I'm sorry. So you have the
Go with
money
the
to
questions.
purchase the vehicle already?
Between, because it's a non-reverting fund, so we're hopeful early next year we'll have enough money between the combination of the state funds for the high-tech crime unit and then the grant funds that we use to offset the high-tech crime unit to be able to purchase a vehicle for the
So
high-tech
what
crime.
if you don't have that, Mr. Hare? What happens?
Well, then we won't buy the vehicle.
Okay.
So why do you need $5,000 for gas this year if you don't have the vehicle?
Well, we're hopeful either that we can purchase it at the end of December with the additional funds, so it's several different payments for that vehicle.
So you're going to spend $5,000 in fuel by December 31st?
We're creating the line item, and so we would just renew that same line item for next year as well.
And Mr. Hanna, this isn't a new money request. It's
No,
funds that
it's-
are already there. You're just
The funds are already there.
establishing a line.
Right.
Make a motion to approve.
It says request for additional appropriations.
That's how that works when you're creating a
You
new
have
line
to do that
item.
in those funds.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not new money, it's
Okay.
just new line item.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got it. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Emery, seconded by Mrs. Likens. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. New money from general fund, prosecutor. This is conference charges and a refund.
We can, we can reduce the total amount here to $12,000. So that would encompass the hotels, the conference fees for all the prosecutors that actually are attending. Again, this is one where the deadline to submit for the meeting was before the actual deadline to register for the conference. And this is, payment of this from the general fund is required by state statute.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Mr. Gale and seconded by Mr. Emery. If there's any public comment specific to this line item. Any other questions from the council? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Next is drainage. This is a reimbursement that went into a reimbursement from Madison County Soil and Water District that came into the general fund for clearing some streams, if I remember right, something they're getting reimbursed and getting it back into their navigable streams account.
Make a motion to approve.
It's been moved by Mr. Emery, seconded by Mr. Vaughn. Is there any public comment to this request? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is Commissioners, liability insurance shortfall, enough to cover through the end of the year.
Tom Ecker, County Administrator. You've been briefed on this, so if you have any other questions, I...
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Mr. Vaughn and Mrs. Keller, new player. Any other question from council? Any public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Hunter. This is new money request from general fund for court admin, court 1 and court 2.
This is another situation where one of our ads is to the public defender account. This is considered new money because it's money that's left over in a different department because the court administration budget has all of the rentals and the office supplies and all that kind of stuff. So we're moving from Circuit Court 1, which is Judge Sims, and Circuit Court 3, which is Judge Hopper, into Public Defender 3900 and Machinery and Equipment 40. Line 4400 is 3000. That is in essence, we have to replace the smart television in Judge Sims's court. It's going out. So we are doing that with our regular budget, obviously, but had to move things around. So any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mr. Emery. Any other questions? Any public comment on this specific item? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. And the sheriff, again, for end of year utilities, $50,000 and food of $60,000.
Other way around. 50,000 utilities, 60,000 in food.
Thank
Make a
you.
motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Mr. Emery. Any council questions? Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinances for the courthouse, Central Dispatch, Madison County, Recorder's Highway Perpetuation, and Highway. We'll take them one at a time. First readings.
Mr. Steele, before we get, would you explain some of the breakdown? I've got it right here in front of me, but we got several of us broke down. Is this in sections that broke down, how they have it, or, I mean, we got three, I see how many we got here in front of me, but you got several different, and you can explain to me.
Why we have different ordinances?
Well, no, well, I mean, you've got several that's, you know, the courthouse dispatch, and then, so where's the general fund at in here?
That's Madison County 2024. That's the
Okay,
one in the
okay,
middle.
okay.
And the reason, as I understand, we have different ones because the budget requests come in from, if we don't approve a specific budget transfer or new fund, then that strikes that part of the ordinance. You wouldn't want to have an all-encompassing ordinance for to cover all items.
So if we have any questions on each of these, we just do it separately?
Yeah, we plan on doing that. I'm just trying to inform the public who may
Is
not know.
this a poll, or is this one of those roll call?
Well, I was getting that. This is a first reading. If it is not adopted unanimously, then it must go through a second reading for adoption.
You're starting with the,
I am starting with the courthouse. That's, unless you have one you want to go through.
no, that's fine. That's the first one that was on
And
there.
remind me, this was the one,
That's the one, I think, where he had to change the line item from one item to the other.
From back
Payroll
in-
line item, yep.
some months ago. And this is ordinance 2023-11C, adjusting the salary for the general fund maintenance custodian.
Make a motion to approve.
I second that.
Motion to approve for Mr. Gale, seconded by Mrs. Norick, will require a roll call vote and signature of your vote, please. Robin?
Councilwoman Norick,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens,
Yes.
Councilman Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilman Emery,
Yes.
President Steele.
Yes. Thank you for your adoption of that on first reading. Second is the central dispatch. And Todd put them in a different order for me, so I had to
I guess
making
this
me
is
work
why
at
I
the
was
end.
confused about when I asked her if it was increasing their salaries. That's why I was confused about that. Because isn't it the same people that were on the transfer?
Yes, but anytime you make a change to that line,
You have to change.
Yeah,
So if you
so
take
even if
money
it's
out
not
of
a
it.
salary increase, yeah.
Okay, all right.
and that's the cumulative, not what we passed. That what we passed was in here. But that's what the line item changes to, if Rick can help, or Todd, but that's what the line item ends up being after this adoption, if adopted.
I make a motion.
Salary ordinance 2023-11D for the Central Dispatch Fund.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mrs. Norick, seconded by Mr. Vaughn. And a roll call vote, please. Did I mess up
Councilwoman
again?
Norick,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens,
Yes.
Councilman Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilman Emery,
Yes.
President Steele.
Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question? Because I'm a little
Yes.
confused about something. So in this particular case, we had to do a new ordinance because they reduced line items for salaries. Is that correct? Is that
No,
what
they
you're?
increased.
They increased
because
them.
of
So when you
additional duties.
so when you decrease them, it does, we don't have to do that because you're just taking money and never mind. I understand my question. Never mind.
Second is the Madison County Salary Ordinance 2024, for 2024, Ordinance 2023-11E. And this is multiple pages.
Yeah, the
Motion to
general
approve.
fund, this is all the general
General-
fund, all the
Second.
ordinances there, right? Yeah, I do have some questions on that.
Okay. It's been moved by Mr. Gale and seconded by Mr. Emery. Did I get that correct? To adopt. And what is your question, or to whom should it be?
My question, this person's gonna be in the auditor's office. We have the elected official, the adopted 24 budget is 66,249, is that correct? I believe, and then, hold on. And then, in the plat book, we're doing a SI ordinance, he's getting an additional another 14,500. So he's gonna make it over $80,000? I mean, in the plat book, it's 14,500.
I don't know.
I do have a question for Rick on that. I know I had asked you during our budget process about that, and you had said that it was only going to increase by whatever the council had increased the percentage, and it was 5%.
Yes.
That's substantially more than that?
No, it's not. It's 5%.
No, Rick, it's $2,500.
Can I say?
You went from 11 something to 14.5?
12 something. Okay, so what's your question?
Well, it went from 12,000, I believe, let me see here. 12,000 to 14.5.
Was it 12,000 or was it 12,500? I don't remember.
Hang on, I got it here. Let me find this. Oh, I had it on a post-it note.
I think it was 12 because we agreed it was 12,600, I think.
Yeah, it was 12,000, and then it went up to 14.5. That's quite a bit more than 5%. So I just
Well, you're looking at the adopted budget line, not the biweekly rate line. So you adopted that budget, but if you take 12,600 divided by 26 pays is $484.61, which is 5%.
You had $12,000 last year that you had appropriated for that elected official position, and now you're appropriating 14.5. That is not.
I'm not appropriating 14.5. You passed a budget at 14.5. I told you.
I don't know when we voted on the miscellaneous budgets. I know we voted on the general fund and the.
Will you look at the salary ordinance piece, not the adopted budget, and you'll see that salary ordinance is at 12.6, not 14.5. Do the math problem.
Are you talking about this salary ordinance?
Yes.
And it says 14.5. Where does it say 12.6?
That says adopted budget. If you remember again, we said you have to pass these at exactly what you had because you were out of sync on what you done and you had an ordinance.
This is not the general fund.
So,
this is the miscellaneous.
I know.
To make sure
Jody,
we're
I've been
all-
around here for 13 years. I know exactly what it is.
Rick, to make sure we're all clear, the council sets the rate of pay with the salary ordinance, not with the appropriation.
Yes.
So if the salary ordinance that we're considering now, you're saying that should say 12,600 from that fund?
You got an hourly rate and a bi-weekly rate, what you're passing. If you take 12,000 plus 5%, which is 12.6, divide that by 26 times a year, and you'll find it's that $484 number. You're making something it's not,
right.
Once again.
Rick, I'm just telling you what it says on
I
the
know
page.
what it says.
It says 14.5. It doesn't say
The adopted
12.6.
budget was 14.5. The salary ordinance piece is 12.6. Do the math problem.
Councilman Steele, could you just confirm, is the...
Just do the math.
Is the
My
salary
goodness.
ordinance, does it list what?
He has my copy.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And where was that at, approximately?
It's toward the back. This is the third time I told you that I get paid from two different funds, and whatever you granted county employees would be exactly what mine is.
Do you know what
Every
fund-
other elected
do you know what
official, it's
fund it is?
1216.
Can you tell me why this is 14.5?
That's the adopted budget.
Okay, so what is this then? I
The
mean,
salary ordinance.
I mean,
So I think what he's suggesting is if you take,
484?
times 26.
Yeah. You have this, Jody.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we budgeted too much in the budget.
No, we're not doing this again,
No, it's
Bethany.
just a question. So
The budget was passed at 14.5. I told you at that time that my pay would be 12.6. We sat here and done the math problem. You said, what's 5% of 12,000? I said, that's $600.
The auditor could
It's a
have,
legitimate question. I mean,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
both-
The auditor, since we passed the 14 whatever, the auditor could have suggested that that's what the salary ordinance would be. But instead, he asked for his salary ordinance to be less than what we as a
Exactly.
council actually passed, because he didn't feel like it was fair for his compensation to go up in excess of what other county
Right.
employees did.
So when that budget was put together, you just didn't know what percentage we were going to give to the employees.
I had no clue what you were
And
going
so
to
you
do.
like overestimated so that the money would be there, and then for the salary ordinance, you're doing the 5% because that's what we agreed on.
That's right.
Can you say that one more time, please, Councilman Gale, what you just said?
Boy, I'm tired.
I
don't
know,
remember.
I'm so sorry.
Y'all are wearing me out. What I believe I just said is that we passed a budget. We approved that line of the budget for 14 something. The auditor then, because he saw that everyone else got the 5%, he requested that the salary ordinance be the 12.6, so that would be the 5%, and it would be in line with other
Exactly.
county employees, where he could have generated the salary ordinance with the 14 whatever it was. But it was his decision, his choice, or his request rather, for us to only consider the 12.6, so that we wouldn't be paying him a higher raise than what most other.
So actually what we need is a thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Well, not necessarily that, just not the accusations anymore.
I was not making an
It was-
accusation. I was trying to understand
I
what
think it
was
was a
on this
legitimate
paper.
Might have should have understood it before you came in tonight.
Okay,
then.
I think,
That's the whole point of a public meeting, is to ask questions.
all
We
right.
shouldn't have
Okay,
to know how
I
we're going
do
to
have
vote
a
before we come
question
into a
about
meeting.
this.
That's the whole point of having the meeting.
You
Here's
might
the
not
thing,
do
no
your
matter
homework
if
before you
it's,
accuse people.
no
I did
matter,
my homework.
President Steele, just so we can stay on
And
track,
if not, you can't do a math problem.
could we
Point of
maybe just go
order.
ahead and move forward on this?
I do have a couple more questions
We
on
do,
a couple
yeah,
line
if you have
items.
some more questions.
Okay, so there was a mix-up in the clerk's office, in the 4D clerk's budget. And I think what happened, I'm not sure about the one line item, and hopefully Linda can shed some light on that tonight. But during the budget hearing, she had talked about moving one of her higher paid employees to the 4D budget because we get a 50% reimbursement from that. What happened though is in the budget workbooks, that number didn't get transferred over. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah,
The
I
higher
remember.
salary didn't get transferred into that line item of what the budget amount was from 23? Does that make sense? So in 23, we had,
Yeah,
say they
I-
paid him, I'm just going to
I
throw numbers
remember
out.
the,
So say in 23, we
conversation.
paid him $35,000, okay, in that line item. But now we moved an employee from her clerk's budget over to the 4D budget because of the 50% reimbursement, and they make $35,000, okay? These aren't the right numbers, but I'm just throwing those numbers out. But when we did the increase of the 5%, we only did it off the 30,000 off the old employee that was in that position. So now the person that's in that position is actually going to make less than what they're making now. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I don't know how we fix that.
It'll have to be, Rick, we had another couple people who pointed out a few, we just have to correct that after in the January meeting, correct?
You've got many things that you didn't address during the budget cycle, and you'll have stuff to address in January. We're collecting those as we go along. There's a dozen of them that I know of, so. And Linda's is some of them.
Okay. And then I don't know if you figured out what happened on the other line item, Linda?
I do know what happened. So the previous clerk did the same thing. She had taken some positions and she took those dollars and divided it so that her employees at that time would get a raise in 2023. That was never put into LAO. So you took the 2022 amount and gave a 5% increase.
On the second one in the 40 budget. Okay.
So we have
both-
lots of problems.
So both of those positions, are those the only two we have a problem with, right, in your budget, I think?
Yes.
So those need to be given to the auditor's office so that we can address those in January. I know you and I talked a little bit about some other ways to remedy it. I don't know that we can do that with the salary ordinance tonight.
And if I would imagine we could also consider as a council, that's by the time we would have our January meeting and remedy this, that maybe 1 or 2 pay periods that employee would be missing. So we could probably do something retroactive, I would think, to make that fair.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps.
So I get to tell my employees that you're going to have short pays, right? Wow. Well, I've been in county government for almost 33 years, and that's never happened, okay?
And then I also have a question on, county agent. I had talked with, I'm going to forget your name, I'm sorry. Mr. Decker, yes. And I had mentioned this to you, Rob. His first deputy and his second deputy are not contractual employees. He does have a contract within his budget, so you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Decker. He does have a contractual portion in his budget. That was, I think, the professional service line. That's the contract, correct?
Right. The contractual services helps pay for the employees of Purdue, which would be myself and 3 other educators,
Not these two.
not the county employees, correct?
So those 2 employees did not receive the 5% increase. They didn't even quite get 2%.
Okay, we'll address that.
Thank you.
I mean, that's,
Can we look at that in
Yeah.
January?
yeah,
Okay.
it's not uncommon that we've
Okay.
found
Thank
little things. And I think we had the 5% or what somebody put in. And that's why we asked people to not put in raises, because then if you assume 2.5% and we didn't take note of it, I don't know what you assumed, if anything. I can't tell you why. I'd have to go back to my original notes.
Well, I think you and I, when we talked, you thought they
Yeah.
were contractual.
No, I know there's some contractual portions with the services they provide. I didn't have a line item, and I didn't have my budget in front of me. Yes.
So we've been having discussions about the shortfall. We could fix that by raising it up to the correct rate now. I mean, obviously, we create a shortfall at the end of the year, but we have time to appropriate that money to make it whole, right? Just because if you took it out to the extreme, yeah, there wouldn't be enough money in there. But anticipating that we're going to make an appropriation and make these folks whole, we could go ahead and increase their salary ordinance up to the level now.
Do we have a list and amounts?
Well, maybe not. That's
I think it's just those, well, I don't know, there's probably some other ones.
Yeah, I know of at least a dozen.
I mean, do we know any specific amounts for specific ones, even if we don't get them all tonight? Okay.
Well, I do have Linda's, but that's the only one I think I have, well, Mr. Decker's would just be
I mean, if we know
looking at
some
the
tonight,
5%.
we can take care of it.
Right.
Do you
I
want to call
gave those
Linda
numbers
back?
if you like.
I don't know if I have her number.
She did give
Would
me
it
the
just
numbers.
be amending the ordinance, making a motion to amend? And
salary
yeah.
ordinance and bring up to the level that they will end up getting anyway,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We'll
Add an
obviously take
appropriation.
some of that and
Yeah.
you're gonna do that anyway.
Yeah.
But at least you take care of one problem.
One part here,
Mhm.
not a payroll shortfall.
Right.
So then perhaps we could deal with
Do
the
we know
county
the exact
agent
amount, what she?
first, and which lines need. And
We
and
will
which-
pull this off a second. And
Can
go
you
to
come
the
back, please?
Highway.
Yeah, we're gonna
Recorder's
correct your
Records
budget now.
Perpetuation Fund. I'll wait till Mrs. Norrick's.
Yep.
So we're gonna haul off this one here and
So
then?
can you do that, please? All right, thank you.
Salary ordinance 2023-11F is the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund. The adjustments as corrected.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mr. Vaughn. Have a roll call vote. Let's wait till Robin gets square.
We're timed out. Too much.
The short meeting.
So make sure you heard your Rob. You already saw it.
Oh.
Any roll call vote?
Recorder's perpetuation fund?
I believe so.
Can I lead my meeting? I'm the chair. Can we have some?
I'm just trying to help you.
No.
Well, I mean,
We were going to vote on 2023-11F. It was Mr. Gale and Mr. Emery, first and second, and we need a roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Norris?
Yes.
Councilman Gale?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens?
Yes.
Councilman Vaughn?
yes.
Councilman Emery?
Yes.
President Steele?
Yes. Thank you. That passes, and we'll get signatures for that. We're waiting on Mrs. Smith.
I'll ask another question if I may, Councilman Steele, on this, since I get interrupted on this, on the general fund. So when we set a salary in the general fund, like I used the example at the auditors, you set it in the general fund, and they get money from whatever that fund we approve in salary ordinance. That, you add them together, that's gonna be their salary, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, there's other departments, for instance, Sheriff's Department, you may get, if you're on got certain certifications, rank. I
Right,
mean,
but
there's
what fund is,
sometimes different.
what
funding.
fund is, like, he's using, like, say, the auditor to get that, it's a perpetuation fund, but what does that
Perpetuation.
consist of?
There are funds that come in from every, I think, deed that's recorded. Robin may be able to tell us if,
Jen, do you have
Rick-
something to say? Is it what you have?
About which part?
I mean, it's not,
I'm asking
most elected officials have
Yeah,
a
so you said-
perpetuation
so
fund.
the salary is not the budget, right?
Right, we set him a general fund salary budget on the general.
Well,
For a lot of employees, they're general fund employees, but not
Right,
all are.
right.
A lot of them come from other funds.
Which the auditor is, so.
Sure.
As well as.
Or both.
As well
Okay,
as-
I'm just, whoever, I just want to try to understand this.
There is, I mean, there's, actually that's that. Grants, support salaries for some departments.
Right, so then you can use other funds from whatever perpetuation fund and everything, you can use other funds for that limited salary. So we set him in general fund, and he's got 14.5 on that one item. You add that two together, that's what he's gonna make.
No,
No.
we
He's
made that correction already. The adopted budget is one thing, the salary ordinance can be entirely different. We have that issue in the Sheriff's Department where we set a budget for those officers, but if someone with higher seniority retires and lower seniority gets stuck in, the budget amount may be greater, but they're only paying them the lesser amount. That's not uncommon.
So then, the 14.5 on that he has in that preparation fund, he has the salary, he can't go above that to give himself added to the 63,000?
No, the 14.5 was an appropriation. That's not his salary. That, he will not get paid the 14.5 out of that. We, in the salary ordinance, have that as 12.6. You could put $1 million, you could appropriate $1 million into an employee's salary and then do a salary ordinance of $30,000 and they would only make $30,000.
But he has the power to give himself the money.
No, he does not, because the county council sets rates of pay.
I'm saying there's a difference of pay in each of his in the salary the last 2 years, like $9,000 something dollars.
Yes.
With the difference of his set salary.
The county council sets the rates of pay and we have that line at 12.6 for the auditor. So that is what
That
he,
was the adopted budget amount. That's the biweekly pay amount. This is what, this line is what they're paid. And that is a 12.6 amount.
If you take that and multiply it out with
Jody,
now,
explain it to them.
times 26 weeks, it comes out to be the correct amount. It comes out to 12.5, 12.6, I think it is, 12.6. If you take the
I'm
biweekly.
just saying, when I look at, and not only Rick's, or not only Mr. Gardner's, but when I look at other salary line items, general fund budget, then I see they got different employees in different areas. You add that up, and you see the amount they submitted to DLGF on employee composition. Now, y'all confusing me because I'm not that dumb at math.
The salary ordinance sets their rate of pay, not the appropriation.
So you gotta look at the
It's that
salary
simple.
ordinance.
The salary
If you're looking
ordinance
at the
cannot
budget
exceed
appropriation, that
the
may not be
budgeted
accurate.
amount, but it can be less. In
Okay,
many
so you
cases,
can
it's
go in
equal.
each-
And it moves around a whole lot of times, right?
Okay,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Come and go.
Okay, so I got Linda's numbers.
Keep
I
in,
just-
I'm sorry.
Let's just, we were in the highway fund. I thought we had started, do we have a first and a second, or had we gotten that far?
I don't think we got that far.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-11G Highway Fund.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gale, seconded by Mrs. Likens. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Robin?
Councilwoman Norick?
Yes.
Councilman Gale?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens?
Yes.
Councilman Vaughn?
Yes.
Councilman Emery?
Yes.
President Steele?
Yes. Thank you again, council. Now we're going to, Jody, I don't know, how do you want to handle this, Rick? Have you got some, of some adjustments that need to be made?
There's several, and I think January's the time to do it. If Linda's here and she can fix hers now, that's fine, but there's a
Mr.
dozen of
Dyer's
them.
here.
You ain't gonna use the money anyway till January.
So if we were just to make a list of those pay lines with the appropriate numbers, then we could just make a motion to approve with those amendments, and we can announce what those, or with those adjustments.
So now we're not gonna do it tonight?
Yes, for these two,
Okay.
because they're here and we can get that information. So if you would want to read off the salary lines and maybe,
Do you want to correct this, Rick, or you want me to write it in?
Just write it in, I guess. Write it off
I
to
will
the
not do
side.
the bi-weekly amount. You want me to do it in red?
That'd be fine.
Do you need a red pen or you got one?
This is clerk or clerk?
It's a
3D?
40, clerk 40. It's
many?
0665. I don't really know where it is in the whole process here. It's a little ways back, Rob.
We'll have to go
About
back and
halfway.
verify it anyway, because we'll have to enter that into the payroll side allow also, so it'll get checked again, so. Just as a note, keep in mind that the county auditor manages 236 funds, so you could be getting, there's some people that might be getting paid for 3 or 4 different places.
Do you know how many
I mean,
pages
you've got,
that gets?
you've got a couple employees that are making a certain amount of money, and then they're getting a $10,000 stipend from another fund.
Yeah.
No different than any of the others, but there's 236 funds, and all of them could have an employee in them, or most of them.
Did you find it?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the 11100, it should be 20,968. How do you do 50 cents? Because I don't see any 50 cents in any of these.
It has to be to the third decimal, I believe, in order for it to work right in payroll. I think that's where she's got that at, doesn't she?
968.500.
So 20,968? Yeah, I don't know, whatever they have to do for that.
Okay.
And then the one down below that is 19,656, and the last one's fine.
I'm sorry, you said the
I'm
third one?
$19,656.
Okay. You said there was a third one?
No, the other one's fine.
Oh. Mr. Becker?
No problem. For
I'm gonna have
county
to
agent, it'd be first deputy, and that is number 11201.
I'm not there yet.
No problem.
These
I will
are,
hold.
they're out of a different order, sorry.
We're always in a little different order for the agent. It's not a problem.
What did I do with my calendar change?
First deputy,
First deputy, which again is line item 11201, that would need to be adjusted to 33,467.
okay.
The second deputy, 11301, will need to be adjusted to 31,103. And I thank you.
Thank you.
So, Ted, for clarification, do we need to have a motion to amend, or can we just
You can
make
have a
them?
consent amendment if everyone agrees.
Okay, then I would just make a motion to approve as adjusted here tonight.
Okay. Mrs. Nork, you were talking, did you have a chance?
No, I was just showing
You're
her the
fine?
numbers.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Roll call, please.
Did we have a first and second on that?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Rick,
What is your deal?
Mr. Gale and Mr. Vaughn. Have a roll call vote, please. Robin?
Councilwoman Norick?
Yes.
Councilman Gale?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens?
Yes.
Councilman Vaughn?
Yes.
Councilman Emery?
Yes.
President Steele?
Yes. Thank you, council. We do have a 15-minute public comment if anyone's interested. Thank you.
Thank you.
What did she say?
She said thank you.
Oh, thank you. I didn't hear what she said.
So just back to
Name
your,
and address,
oh,
please.
Catherine Callahan, I'll give you 299 East Pendleton Avenue. So, let's see here, about your grain elevator. I just wanted to comment on that.
Grain
Or not grain
elevator.
elevator, the American elevator thing that you guys were talking about. So there was an article in the Herald Bulletin. In the Herald Bulletin, it stated, "The council by a vote of 4-3 approved a request for the Madison County Commissioners to transfer $400,000 from the group insurance fund. The commissioners earlier this year awarded the contract to American Elevator of Anderson in the amount of $394,500 to replace the two elevators. Commissioner Kelly Gaskell said the county is facing a tight money situation, but the funds are available in group insurance or the group insurance reserve fund. However, another option considered by the council was transferring $400,000 from the wind farm economic development account to pay for the elevators. So why wasn't the money taken from where the former commissioner said they could have it from, then depleting the account? That was in the Herald Bulletin, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Any other public comment? Our next meeting will be on January 9th.
Any motion adjourned?
Why do we
Motion
not
to
have a
adjourn.
meeting in December?
It has to do with the budget cycle. If you spend your monies, by the time you get that invoice, they have to be into the commissioners for 5 days before payment can be rendered.
And that would be December 19th, yeah. claims
Which is
would have to be
after-
paid.
That's why everyone's encouraged to get all their last year or end of year budgets in.
And a reminder that they need to get encumbrances in if they do have
Encumbrance.
bills.
The short answer is it's just too late for us to take any action that can be followed through with in the calendar year.
Unless they've spent money without appropriation, which wouldn't be out of the ordinary for some departments. So we've had a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
David, do you want to say something? We're gonna be up here signing. We're just signing stuff. You can come up.